Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing this eyeshadow look using this palette. This is one of the newest releases from Oden's Eye. It is the Planet Spirit palette in collaboration with Betty Jean or Batty Bean. I think this is still available. It is limited edition, so I'll link it down below in the description box along with everything that I'm using. And we're gonna do this eyeshadow look. If you want to see how I did it, then just stick around. As you guys can see, I already did one eye, and the reason was that I put my two little ones down for a nap, and then I needed to give lunch to my older child, and I thought, well, I need to take advantage of the quiet time while the small ones are sleeping, just in case it doesn't last very long. So I quickly did the first eye while I was preparing lunch, and now here I am to finish up my eye look because I think they're both still sleeping. Anyway, I used the Planet Spirit palette today, of course, and then I have my palette pull-in from the Through My Eyes palette from ColourPop. I'll card above the video where I talk about what palette pull-in is. Basically, I am trying to use all the palettes in my collection and challenging myself with a little mini palette bingo. So I've used the first 4 shades in the palette, and now I'm on to shade number 5 because it's the 5th time I'm using it. So shade number 5 is this one here called In a Wink, and that one is actually going to be really easy to incorporate in today's look. So let's zoom in and get going. I will say, I think that the Planet Spirit palette, while it is very pretty, is actually the least cohesive out of all of them. I have a lot of trouble looking at this color story. Again, it's beautiful, but most of it's, actually all of it's mid-toned except for one shimmer. And there's kind of a shimmer and a matte that work together, but there's nothing to work with the other colors. You know, you've got teal, hot pink, orange, purple, and berry. And you have no light shades to blend out those colors, and you have no dark shades to deepen or smoke out those colors. It's a very difficult palette to work with, and I knew that going in. I've said before when I talk about procuring these palettes that I bought them as a set to work together. I knew that the Planet Spirit would be the most challenging for me. I think the easiest way to use this palette would be to do a halo eye. And that was my plan, but then I wanted to push myself a little further and say, well, what if I didn't do a halo eye? How could I get the lighter tones that I want without actually having them as an option? I'm taking a medium-sized blending brush and going into the shade Kingdom, and I'll show you. The way to get lighter tones, especially with Oden's Eye, which is a very good formula, I have dipped into the pan extremely lightly, and I'm placing that formula in my whole crease area. But because I'm going in so lightly, I'm gonna use that as my transition color, and then I'll deepen it with itself because I can build it upon itself. So I tap extremely gently into the pan, and then I work it into my crease a bit until I've laid down a pretty medium coverage across the whole space of my crease. It's not extra dark in one area and really light in another. And now I'm using circular motions to blend it outwards. This is my transition color because there's nothing else in the palette that I can use. I wanted to see what I could do about creating a cohesive look with some depth, despite the fact that the palette doesn't really offer me a lot of gradient in terms of light, medium, dark. So now you can see I've used that shade as its own transition color. Now I'm taking a smaller brush and I'm going to go into the same shade, but now I'm going to concentrate it in my outer corner. This will create the depth. I mean, honestly, it doesn't even go as deep as I would like. I wish there were something even darker in this palette, but there's not, and that's okay. For the first video using these palettes, I want to just use these palettes. The palette pull-in doesn't count. I suppose it could if I were using it in a significant way, but for my first look using the Sea Talk palette, when I dedicated a video to that palette, I did use the palette pull-in, but the shadow that I used was comparable to one of the shadows in the Sea Talk palette, so you could have recreated that look using only Sea Talk. It was simply a shimmery bronze. And now in this look, I'll show you. I'm going to create this look without using the palette pull-in, and then I'll use it, because fortunately the shade I got is more or less a skin tone matte. So here you can see I have created the depth in my outer corner, and then there is one thing I want to do. I want to carry this outer corner at a diagonal like this. I like that angle for my own face shape. I'm dragging it diagonally down to meet my lashes. And I'm also going to use this same small brush and put that shadow on my outer third of the lower lash line. And here it's going to be more concentrated. It doesn't need to be really light toned because I want the depth in the outer corner. Okay, so now let's take some shimmers. With a flat brush, I'm first grabbing the shade Majestic. This is a beautiful gold shimmer. I'm going to load up my brush and then I'll spray it. Working with that diagonal that I placed down, I'm putting Majestic starting at my inner corner and going up into my crease and on my lid space, well, not into my crease, but you know, butting up against my crease and all over my lid space but where the green meets the upper lashes, I'm kind of letting the shade stop there so that even the gold shimmer is more of a diagonal. So the gold shimmer is going to pull higher over here, and it's going to stop lower over here. Do you see what I mean? Hopefully you can see what I mean. Now there is a teal shimmer in this palette which perfectly matches the Kingdom matte we already laid down. So I'm dipping into that one. I'm not going to spray it because I don't want this one to be as hyper pigmented as the gold which I laid down. This is only helping transfer from the gold shimmer into the green teal matte. So I've loaded up my brush, but I'm not spraying it, and I'm putting it right where the gold shimmer meets the green matte. And it just helps blend the formulas and the colors into one another when there's a big difference between the two of them. Yeah. Now I'm going to take a smaller blending brush and dip into the shade Rescue. This is a rich pink matte, and I'm going to start it where the green matte ends on the outer corner and drag it to my inner corner. The reason I'm not starting it at my inner corner is because this is definitely more of a mid-tone shade, and I don't necessarily want it to be extremely pigmented right over here. So I'm starting it out here where I do want the deep pigmentation, and then I'm just dragging it, and it'll kind of get lighter and lighter, a little more diffused as I drag it in. Now I'll take the same brush and clean it off, and I'm grabbing the shade Fauna. Fauna is the multi-chrome in this palette. It's a pink, gold, dusty rose sort of color, and it's really pretty. I'm going to spray it on my brush, and I'll place this on my inner corner, and I'm also going to drag it at the inner part of the lower lash line and over onto the pink matte. Not all the way, just maybe a third of the way. This is a surprisingly fiery sort of color because it is mainly pink and gold, but when you put it on the lid, on the eye, depending on what you're pairing it with, it doesn't necessarily pull orange, but it has kind of a fiery glow. It reminds me of a shadow in the Hella palette. Can't remember which one. I don't remember. I'll find out and let you know. It reminds me of a shade in the Hella palette. Just a beautiful, fiery, peachy, pink sort of iridescent. I don't know. It's lovely. So this is the entire look. If you didn't use the Through My Eyes palette, you can see there's almost no difference between this side and this side. The thing that I did with my palette pull-in was, sorry, I took a larger blending brush that was clean, and I dipped into the shade In a Wink, which is my color for the day, and I just used this theoretically to help blend out my transition color when I used the teal so lightly. I only put it right up here, extremely lightly, and just use it to add a little bit more of my skin tone into the shadow because it is pretty close to my skin tone. So taking that and bringing it into the shadow will just help diffuse the color even more so that it behaves more like a transition shade. But as you can see, totally unnecessary. Like I said, these are Oden's eyeshadows. They perform so well, and I've noticed this before that you can take a mid-tone or darker Oden's Eye matte, and if you just work at it lightly and blend it out, you don't always need a secondary color. Not all brands are created equal, so you absolutely might need a transition tone for a quality of shadow that was a little bit lower, but Oden's Eye is amazing. I really wanted to challenge myself to do a whole look using this palette. I did one before. Did I tell you? I'm sorry. I'll put up a video of the look that I did the first time I used this palette, and that look was okay. It was just too monochromatic to excite me. I should have chosen other colors, but it was kind of on the fly. Anyway, I didn't love that look, but I did love the colors, and that's why I got the palette, because I knew that I'd love the colors. I think that the best use for me with this palette is to do a halo eye, because I can envision just bright, vibrant matte and then a sparkle in the center. All is well and good, but I wanted to challenge myself, because that's my expectation, to do an eye look that's more in accordance with my standard aesthetic, see what I could do about creating a mid-tone shade when there was none. So here's how it finished out. In my waterline, I'm using ColourPop Creme Gel Liner. The shade is called Fluffy, and then on my lips I'm wearing the NYX Butter Gloss in the shade Peaches and Cream. I have a little bit of blush on from the Tarte Blush Palette. Everything that I'm using is linked in the description box if you're curious. And I did do this shade right here as a face highlighter. So I'll turn, maybe you guys can see that in the light, but that's right here as a face highlighter. It does make a really pretty highlighter. Lots of, like I said, sort of a fiery pink gold without being orange. It's kind of a cool shade. I feel like this look resembles greatly something that I've done with the Hella palette from Oden's Eye. To be fair, that palette is green and pink. So when I use the green and pink from this palette, it's the same brand, the look is going to be comparable. This palette obviously has other shades, and that palette has other shades. They're not dupes at all, but I think the looks that I came up with are similar because I like green and pink together. This is the look. I think it's pretty. I hope you like it too. The quality is exactly what I expected it to be. It's just beautiful. I look at this one as sort of a featured color sort of palette. Like I want to use this shade, or oh, I definitely want this bright, fiery, peachy orange. You know, I want a specific shade and then I'm going to use it with other palettes. This is a companion for me. To my aesthetic, it's not the easiest thing to come up with one and done looks. Like one palette is all you need. Obviously, I created this look today using it, and I created the other one that I showed you in the little clip, and I could easily do a decent halo eye with this one. Actually, probably a really pretty halo eye with this palette, but generally, for the most part, I'm probably going to be using it with others. I think today's look is quite lovely, and I hope you like it too. Thank you so much for being with me. Remember to subscribe if you like what you see. I'll see you guys again really soon in my next video. Bye! This is the Flora. No, it's not. Today I'm doing this eyeshadow look I made. I hope that you can...
Maybe you should stop speaking for the day.
It's helpful, thank you.